Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome back at the 6th webinar in the series of the Global Cloud Skills Tour. We're here in the Microsoft office in the studio, and with me today is Ron Augustus, Customer Success Lead in the Netherlands, and he will talk to you about all kinds of best practices of skilling customers, but also skilling Microsoft. But before I further introduce Ron, let me do a brief introduction. My name is Patrick Kesten. I'm Program Director at CompuTrain in the Netherlands, and I'm Chairman of the Board of LLPA, and LLPA is the organizing organization of the Global Cloud Skills Tour. A quick overview of LLPA. We are a consortium of 32 training partners from all over the world, from Latin America to Australia, from Iceland to South Africa, and we cover, with our members, we cover 52 countries, but we have deliveries in every single country in the world. And deliveries on training and helping people to certify, because that's a very important part of this Global Cloud Skills Tour. Training, deliveries, certification, we do that with our framework, the Cloud Certification Framework, Cloud Certification Circle, as was presented a couple of weeks ago by my colleague Michael Svoboda. And this way we help organizations to execute the skills plans globally. So also international customers, and we provide a single point of contact to make sure that these executions run smoothly. And that you can certify as most people as possible, because that's actually what's needed nowadays. Show your skills by validating them with a certification. Reason for this series was that we thought a year ago, what happens with all these skills? Do people in organizations have the right skills for the future? Well, the answer is no. And many of you know that you can benefit from new technologies. Many of you know that you need a clear cloud transformation strategy, but some of you don't. But only a couple of percent, 3.5% of your workforce is skilled for the future, has the right IT skills. And that faces us with a huge skills gap, and that's a threat for the future for your organization. If you want to grow, if you want to benefit from the cloud, then you need to skill your people. So that's why we set up this series of cloud skills events. We started with physical events, then COVID-19 came, so we had to turn virtual, but what a year it was. It was a great journey, and you see some pictures on the screen. We went to Belgrade, we went to Helsinki, Johannesburg, Milan. We went to Amsterdam to show you virtually everything around the cloud skilling journey. But here we are now, 30th of June, and it's the final event. Well, almost the final event, because I have something on the last at the end of this event where you can go to as well. But for the original series, this is the last event. I'm very proud that Ron Augustus is here today with me. Ron is Customer Success Director of Microsoft Netherlands, and he worked together with many customers. And after all these events about why do you need to skill, what do you need to do, how do you adopt, the last week, the cloud skilling, the 8 rules, or the eight adoption principles by Herman and Jan. Everything we talked about, all the aspects of cloud skilling. But now you want to know, what are the results? Do we have customers that did that journey already? And yes, we do. And Ron will talk about those examples, and he has some great examples. And online we also have 2 people who I will introduce later, but it's Miso Jankovic from Serbia and Maria Albulescu from Romania, and they will talk about 2 customer best practices also. So we have 5 best practices for you. So, well, let's get started. Let's give Ron the floor, and let's make sure that you will hear about those best practices. Ron, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Patrick. For me, it's a pleasure to do this webinar today. It's the final day of the fiscal year of Microsoft. Fiscal year 20 will be ending today, and tomorrow will be a new fiscal year. So let's look back on what we've been doing on cloud skills, not only on some of our customers, but also what we've been doing internally. It's a pleasure to do this session together with Miso and Maria, and we'll get right started and get to it. In the beginning of my storyline is this bird, a bird you will probably recognize as a dodo. The dodo is a dove-like, pigeon-like bird that lived on the island of Mauritius in the Indian Ocean. And up until 1650, they lived by thousands together, doing very well, living together nicely, not sensing any danger, and living in a virtual heaven. Within 25 years, after some Dutch seamen actually came to Mauritius, and after months on sea, they were dying to eat some chicken, they took on this dodo, and within 25 years, the total species became extinct. An example of what can happen to you if the environment changes so fast and you're not adapting to the change in that environment. So keep the dodo in mind. From the dodo to Charles Darwin is perhaps a small step. Charles Darwin wrote a book on the origin of species, in which he didn't necessarily talk about the origin of species, but he did make one specific, very important point. That is, that if an organism can adjust to their environment, it is more likely to survive than if the organism is not able to adapt to that environment. So survival of the fittest is not something that he ever wrote. Survival of the strongest is not something that he ever said. The ones that will survive are the ones that are able to adapt. Now, if this is true for individuals and species, it might also be the case for organizations. Now, going into organizations and looking at Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, who joined in 2014, on the first day he started his new role, he said, of all industries, the IT industry is an industry that is not, let's say, having a respect for tradition only. It only respects innovation. So if you look at the dodo, where change and adaptation is needed, to Charles Darwin, where you need to adapt to make sure that you can survive on the long term, the IT industry probably is the area where the change is going the fastest of all industries. So something in our industry really helps and asks us to change ourselves as well. Because in the IT industry, we are in a VUCA environment. And VUCA stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, meaning that everything changes constantly. It's like in the quantum mechanics world, in a sense. If you think you understand it, you're probably wrong, because it changed every day so fast. And in order to make sure that you are able to adjust to what's happening outside, training and education and skills internally, adapting to that environment is one of the key areas. If we look on the history of IT, this is actually what's happened already for the last 90 years. With the, let's say, first computers entering the stage in the 1940s in Germany, the UK, and in the US, and in the certainly with the Second World War, it really led to an increase in the speed of the development of computers. Now, after that, the development of transistors in the 40s and the deployment of those transistors in integrated circuits in the 1950s meant that computers could be smaller. I think the transistor may be one of the most important inventions of the 20th century. Then looking at the 50s, going into the mainframe area, starting in the 60s, where all those transistors were used, let's say, on big computers, developing bigger computer power to organizations and to NASA, for example, in that time, leading to a new era in the 1970s, where microcomputers and microprocessors were used by Intel first in 1971, to make sure that we could also produce microprocessors for specific solutions within the computer area. And with that, computers could become smaller, leading to the PC startup in the 1980s, led by Apple and by IBM, and with Microsoft turning into the IBM uptake on the PCs in the 1980s, developing MS-DOS. Going into the 1990s, the advent of mobile phones, the advent of laptops came into play, so a big change in that area. From 2000 on, the World Wide Web that was already developed in the 1990s really came to light in the years 2000, from 2000 to 2010. A lot of bubbles, a lot of commercial activities on the internet took place. And in the last 10 years, it certainly was all about cloud, combining all different capacities and capabilities and storage to central areas to make sure that we combine areas and work more efficiently across the globe. Also leading to new gaming areas, to online gaming, where people from all over the world could just participate in one game. Now, for the next 10 years, it's probably going to be about edge. Yes, the cloud is there already, the edge around computing, so looking at devices that can interact with the internet, with cars that can drive on their own, with all kinds of machines that will be talking to the internet. That's the area for the next 10 years to prepare for. And probably the 10 years after that, starting from 2030, quantum computing may be in that stage where, let's say, a total new area of computing may come to us. So even in our own IT environment, we've seen this change happening constantly in a pace that is really exponential. So that means it's more difficult as we go along to keep, let's say, pace of all the changes around us. And that means in developing your own skills strategy, you need to be specific in what kind of skills you need to train. When Satya Nadella came on board in 2014, Microsoft was at a crossroads. It was doing pretty well financially, but it was more like a middle-aged company that had good financial systems and good financial reporting and a very established company. But looking at the future, looking on the way Microsoft adopted to the environment, you could say there was room for improvement in that area. You could also say, did Microsoft have a reason to change fast? Was there a compelling reason to change? Because you could say, we're doing fine, the financials are great, we're making these margins, why should we adjust so hard to that environment? Satya was really convinced that changing, let's say, towards the environment was key to the survival of Microsoft on the long term. And he started by changing the culture of Microsoft. He wrote a book called Hit Refresh, in which one of the lines that he had in that book was that anything would be possible for a company when its culture is about listening, learning, and harnessing individual passions and talents. Now, if that is the case, one of the key changes for Microsoft itself in the last 10 years is that we put learning in the core of our transformation. It's not strategic, it's crucial. It's the first step that the company has in order to be able to lead the environment instead of follow the environment. On the worldview of Microsoft, you probably heard about this before. We have the cloud in the center, but the intelligent edge around that. So that's the central framework that Microsoft is combining all its training around, which should be, let's say, accessible through multi-devices. Doesn't matter from which device you're going to access this, but multi-sense as well, not only through keyboards. More and more attention is going towards interactions with computers by speech or by other means. So that means it's multi-sense. It's driven by artificial intelligence. Machines can learn in themselves, so machine learning as well. And you have to think about this if this is learning on a global scale. So it's not individual learnings or one computer learning, it's all computers combined sharing their learning. So that means that learning itself is becoming, let's say, one of the key areas of growth in developing our efficiency and computer systems around the world. That also brings responsibility on privacy. One of the key areas that Microsoft is focusing on is not only on technology, but if you're going so fast on technology, how can you keep pace on the growing demands of privacy of our society? And how can you make sure you can do all those stuff in an ethical way? Also part of training programs that we're using, and certainly part of the cultural change that we're driving. And that's not only true for privacy, it's certainly true for sustainability as well. Because if you're using more and more computing resources around the world and computing power around the world, how can you make sure you can use that power in a sustainable way and use, let's say, your total ecosystem also in a fair way socially? So that's part of the way Microsoft is transforming. I just wanted to mention that next to all technology stuff that's out there. Now, Microsoft changed in that last 6 years around 4 big pillars. Of course, there's the software pillar that we're all familiar with Windows in it, with Office on it, with Dynamics on it, working it all together in Microsoft 365. So that was, let's say, the combination of products and software products. But Microsoft became more than a software company. It was a company that, let's say, focused on communications, on networking, on connecting people, not only by building teams as one of our central products on how companies can work together, and certainly in these COVID-19 times, let's say the use of Teams has really peaked in the last couple of months, and we see it as one of the reasons to cooperate internally, but also with customers and organizations. So that's a really key area and component. The acquisitions of companies like GitHub and companies like LinkedIn helped us also to develop networks within the open source community and between companies as well. So connecting companies would be the second pillar of Microsoft. The third would be about cloud and cloud services, because cloud is not in an infrastructure itself with virtual machines. No, it's about software running and services running on that infrastructure. So all kinds of cloud services are being developed. We have this Bing infrastructure in which we also have our linguistic machine learning developing, etc. So Bing is still an important part of that, and our big investments in data centers around the world. And hardware would be the fourth pillar. Not so much on the mobile phone area, we were earlier in, but more on devices. Devices like Surface Hub, that is really picking up in the market today, but also on the holograms and the HoloLens and Xbox things. So hardware is still the fourth component, and this is how we're built and changed the organization. If you want to change a culture to be more learning and more listening, there's all kinds of changes you need to make. The change of being a silo organization where actually departments compete between each other that we had, let's say, earlier on, and you sometimes see in larger organizations. How can you make them, let's say, focus together on a customer, to be aligned and work as one Microsoft? One of the biggest changes was on aligning internally first. Then the relationship that we had with many customers was more or less based on transactions, not so much doing deals, not so much on building trust. So that was a different change area that we had to focus our learning on. The third would be on the way how we operated our company. Quarterly license sales, which was, let's say, more or less, let's say, the key component the market was looking on. We saw that more and more the market, the stock market, but the whole world, the expectations were changing from quarterly license sales to potential for the future, for usage on clouds. That is more important on how your company is rated than the quarterly sales themselves. So, and that's all about customer obsession. Because if a customer is not using your products or doesn't think they're good enough, they will change to a different vendor, and for good reason. So making sure a customer is really happy with the software and the services that are getting there is something that's totally different than only focusing on doing the deal. So changing from deals to technology usage, but also the management style within Microsoft changed. From command and control, we centrally plan it, and you go in the individual countries, go and execute, changed into how can we all learn together? How can we get individual responsibility as local as possible and use our, let's say, communication structure to get the ideas spread across the organization? A totally different way of steering. Or looking on sales skills were pretty much important. It's more about listening skills. It's more about technical skills. So we are, let's say, training, technical training for everybody within Microsoft. Not only for technical employees, for architects or for consultants. No, managers need to be trained on technology. Our leaders need to be trained on technology. Because if you don't understand cloud technology or edge technology, you're probably not going to be aware of opportunities in the market today. So we need to all be trained on that. And certified. Every manager within Microsoft needs to be certified on certain aspects of our cloud. being closed to be changing that to being open, changing and also telling about the mistakes we're making as a company, because that's part of learning. If you don't make mistakes, it's strange. You have to share those to make sure that others are not are learning from your mistakes as well. And you're more explicit if you're sharing your mistakes in what your own learning is. So we're really sharing that as well. Also from a managerial perspective, it's not necessary to be perfect and not making mistakes. No, be human and share those mistakes as much as possible. It's a totally different approach. And finally, being seen as from a technology supplier to a trusted partner, which comes, let's say, in a very long time. And if you make a few mistakes, this could diminish over time as well. So this is still a journey. We're certainly not there. We're making a lot of mistakes getting there, but this is the way we're going. One of the books in learning we put central from 2014 on is this book, and perhaps you've read it, perhaps you're not. It's called Growth Mindset by Professor Carol Dweck. And in this growth mindset approach, which is crucial to our total strategy for Microsoft, were three factors. One is that IQ and things that the way how you think is not something that's there already. It's something that can be trained. It's not something that you're born with. It's something that you can develop. That's the purpose of IQ. It's makeable. So if you have this intention of being more, let's say, smart in a certain way, you can train your IQ yourself and bring it forward. Second point was that if you're open to learning, by having an open mindset, instead of thinking, I'm never able to do that. Because if you say that to yourself, you're probably never going to make forward. That's the difference between having an open mindset and a mindset towards learning compared to a closed mindset. If you think, I will never learn mathematics, you'll probably never learn because your mindset is not set that way. So that's the second part. And the third would be that in setting, let's say, the transformation goals and learning goals in an organization, this is something that can change the whole ecosystem and the way how the whole organization works as well. So an important book. It was mandatory reading for people within Microsoft, and it's one of the foundations of how we try to develop our leadership. Or in the words of the great Swedish philosopher Pippi Longstockings, she said, well, if I do something for the first time, and I've never done it before, I think I can probably do it. That's the right open mindset to have in setting a learning strategy. Next to this culture of change, an organization change also happened. This happened 3 years ago when Microsoft decided to put more resources and funding on a new unit, the Customer Success Unit, which I was happy to lead in the last 3 years in the Netherlands. Because she said, if you're not focusing on customers and making sure that the technology is used, you will win this battle. You will not be able to adapt to your society and will end up as a dodo. So this is where the focus of our investments were going. And that meant that, for example, in the Netherlands, we now have about 75 people working in the Customer Success Unit, spread out in two groups. One group is more looking at the SaaS, software as a solution, software as a service area. This is where the CSMs, Customer Success Managers, are working, helping customers from a business perspective to implement teams, to implement dynamics, and making sure that we're getting every benefit out of that technology while implementing it and changing the organization around it. So they're talking to HR departments, they're talking to finance departments, to business departments, not necessarily IT, to make sure we're driving those changes. The second part are CSAs, or Customer Solution Architects, Cloud Solution Architects sometimes. And these technical folks are looking more on the internet infrastructure as a service and also platform as a service, technical services to our customers, changing their own cloud infrastructure. And we have about 50 of those. So this is a big investment, and we're putting them into market at no cost for the customer, just to build our joint relationship. So this is a big investment in the area. And then looking on cloud acceleration, what we see that has been working is a combination of three factors. The first would be that as an organization, you need to be clear on your cloud strategy. Is everybody organization on one page? Do we have, let's say, a clear picture on what the cost benefits would be in moving towards the cloud? Do we believe in that it would be more cost effective? Do we also know in what stages would we move to the cloud? Because if you have your own data center, it might take some time. So having clarity on that strategy is number one. Within the customer organization, We can help in developing that strategy. We don't need to be the only cloud provider that's in there, but helping that strategy one step further is the number one area. If you don't have a clear strategy, you'll probably not be moving fast. The second is all about skills and readiness. So that means that if you're moving to a cloud area, people need to be trained on what cloud is. Now this has three parts. It's the technical part. So what is Azure? How does it work? What is networking? All these things can be trained and you can be certified. But it's certainly not only about technical certification. Looking on management needs to also understand what cloud really means. The business needs to understand what kind of possibilities could be brought into it. So it's a technical training, it's training for management as well, and it's also training on how to adopt technology. Because you can say it's great, let's go in that direction, we know what the purpose could be, but if then the organization takes a long time to adopt the technology change, you're still not going fast. So three areas: change management, the management itself, and technology. And the third plate in change is cooperation and partnership. Because you can have a strategy, you can train all the people you like. If you are working in an ecosystem with partners that are not working together to help you, if you have incumbent partners that are not really, let's say, focused on making this change, and then you have to work with Microsoft and other partners to go fast, it probably will not work that fast. So three different areas that will bring your cloud speed further. First example that we're using close to our home, Microsoft itself. So what have we been looking into, and what are my learnings on skills? The first one would be looking on architects, so real deep technical folks. We're getting them out of the market. One of the greatest groups of technology expertise, I think, that we have in the market today. So the question is, how do you attract them, and how do you keep them actually within your organization? Sometimes people think that compensation is one of the most important things, so offer them a lot of money and they'll probably come, which may help on the short term. But typically, knowledge workers only see this as a, let's say, an environmental factor. It shouldn't be unfair, otherwise I would leave, but it's not the most motivating thing. What is motivating are two different things. One is everything that's looking from outside in is, am I being seen? Can I blog? Can I write about technology? Can I get the recognition from my customers in that? Do I have progression in my role? So that's things are how you're seen in that role. That's important, outside in. The third one would be, how can you share your knowledge with others? That's an important factor in how to attract talent and keep talent. So part of this is training, so how are people being trained, but it also means that people should have some leverage in which areas they're working in to make sure that they can combine their passions. We can still, let's say, steer it a bit, but it's important to be consulted, it's important to have the training in place so you can share your own knowledge as well. And this is actually one of the key practices that we're now putting into place, how that every architect can share the knowledge worldwide, not only within Microsoft, not only within our customer community, but in the whole worldwide communities. For architects, 4 steps were developed. The first step would be, if someone came on board, even coming from university or school, no technical, real deep knowledge yet, but an open mindset, we first start on technical in-depth training with certifications. So people are really in their books, are really looking on their screens, working with their colleagues, asking questions, being coached and mentored to get through that certification problem. So this is deep technology training as a first step. The second step would be, if you've done the first step, to look at, could you do this for a couple of technology areas? So you can have more an overview and you can compare between different technologies. So that will be the second step. The third step would be, if you're trained technically, do you have the social skills, listening skills, communication skills to get your story across? Because if you don't have that, you may think you know about technology, but you'll never be able to convince your customer and the organization to follow your path and work on this together. So social skills is the third step that's so important. Actually leading to the fourth step That is not only convincing and convincing in a sense that we're doing things together, not telling people what is best, but working on it together because it's all a hands-on and experience these days. The fourth step would be convincing C-level and managers and directors and CEOs of organization what the potential of cloud could be. And this is all done by technical staff, and we're able to tell this in business terms. 4 steps in that journey. Second example would be Shell, one of our largest customers in the Netherlands, worldwide customer, who also is having experiences with a VUCA world, certainly now with COVID-19 and lower oil prices. So we started already last year a journey to first identify for jobs in the technical area at Shell, in the IT area, what analysis can we do to see what is currently already in place and what is needed for the future. Based on that, 2 things were developed: a training program for all these employees, but second also a certification program. So people could have a path that was working with online training, with meetings that were set up, with instructor-led training, with the books they could read. So a total program set up around all different possibilities from a learning perspective. And every phase was ending by a certification period. So the components were with specialty, role-based fundamentals. This is how you build up a program like that. And companies like Computrain could certainly help in developing these. And in a skilling plan that was developed, these events, there were people came together and shared their knowledge, together with the digital online skills, instructor-led training and certifications were all mapped together. Looking something like this, so on a timeline you can say, so what are the different activities in what certain period, and how can we measure if we're on, let's say, the right track. This is using the different certification methods that Microsoft is having, not only from a fundamentals level, where you will typically start, not only for Azure, but also for Office and for Dynamics, and then moving into the associate level and the expert level. So you have different level of certifications you could follow. For Shell, this led into a way that we're now training, let's say, up to more than 600 architects in their environment. It should be, there are already 100 certified today. More than 1,000 should be certified in the next year. Many registrations across the world, and this is seen as one of the fun factors in combining all the technology knowledge within such a large company. Also some learnings. One is, if you're going down the route of having big scale skill programs, it's not something that you hand over to a company like Computrain or a company like Microsoft to do this for you. It should be owned by the organization itself. That's one of the key areas that drives success. It has to be seen as a strategic route. And to be honest, which company would not say that attracting and keeping talent would not be strategic in that sense, but it has to be made explicit, so it is steered from the top. It's not an HR thing for the organization. It has to be a business thing. It has to be seen from that side, so it will get the right attention and the right resources. The second learning that we had is that communications about skills programs may be tricky, because it is pretty complex. You have very different routes, very different ways you can do a training, different training setups you can make. So being clear on what choices you make to simplify the total steps is key in driving this. And also communicating this more simplified version to the whole organization will make them understand more where we are in the total phasing. Start with the core as one of the areas here. Don't go too deep too fast. Think about the 4 steps we took within Microsoft. Be clear on what your structure is within your skills program. Finally, if you do it centrally, it has a lot of advantages overdoing it the department to department based, because you can actually fill in gaps. If, let's say, spaces become available, people are not able to come, you can fill it up from different departments. But it's also clearer to keep one central structure on where you actually are. So there's more governance in the total structure if you do it centrally. So own it as an organization, make sure you communicate clearly in the right steps and simple, and also make sure you do it from a central point of view. Those will be the lessons learned from the Shell example. Also within the government, we see many organizations going in this direction. Within the Netherlands, one of our larger customer organizations also spend a lot of time in thinking about how can we actually attract talent from the market and keep the right talent in place. And also look not on the current jobs, but the jobs, the new positions that will be there in 5 years' time. Probably positions they don't have today. So what are the new roles that they expect coming into the organizations? And they put a training program based on that. For this, the specific organizational, governmental organization, they didn't make certification mandatory, it was optional. But participating in this total trajectory, not only technical, also looking on skills like soft skills, agile working, was all put together in one training environment. So in summary, my takeaway would be 4 key things. One is define training as a strategic thing. If you don't see it like this from a CEO level, something may be wrong on the Dodo Darwin side of the organization. Are you able to keep the pace of the environment if you don't set this up in the right way as Microsoft has? And every organization can do it in their own way, but it has to be strategic. The second thing would be, if you identify future skills to current gaps, don't only look on technical skills. Only look on how can we train our management? Is C-level giving the right example in being those trainings and being certified? Are they eager to be trained and to be certified? Or is it something, no, we need to be trained, but it has to be done by the technical folks? No, I think C-level has to take an example in this. The third would be define learning plans for all seniority levels, from juniors to experts. You can work pretty good with juniors come into expert teams because the mix is really bringing fun and is bringing new learning experiences for all. So that is a third part. And finally, as I said, with the 3 clouds, cloud strategy being clear on that, having the right partners in place, but also training the different parts, having a readiness session. That's the 4th part of going fast in the cloud. And with that, I want to hand it back to Patrick to have us also have a look at what Mizo is doing in Serbia, but Maria is doing in Romania. Patrick?
Exactly. Thank you very much, Ron. Great story, and I especially like the Microsoft example. Practice what you preach, and if you do it at Microsoft, and you can see you could see the example, this could be a very good inspiration for you. But also the other examples, of course. But now we have, next to Ron, we have 2 other special guests, and they are based in Romania and in Serbia. And first one to start talking about his best practice, his experiences, is Mizo Jankovic, and he is the head of domain and cloud unit at Raiffeisen in Serbia. He's online now at the moment, and I want to give the floor to Mizo. Please take it away.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Perfectly. Hello, everybody. Firstly, I would like to thank my LLPA friends for inviting me to this webinar. Name is Mizo Jankovic, and I'm coming from Raiffeisen Bank in sunny Belgrade. Let me tell you in a few words about one use case of a certain Azure service that we have implemented very quickly and successfully. In banking business, beside user experience as a very important measure of quality, we also have a legal obligation for some services to run 24/7 and are expected to be performant. Being one of the leaders in digital transformation on local market, it is extremely important for us that our online services are fast, available and reliable. As you all know, clients tend to get very unsatisfied when mobile banking application does not work or underperform. As our business grew, we need to have often changes on our mobile application, and every change required part of application to be updated by fetching data from our local on-premise web service. Considering we have around 150,000 mobile users, most of them on daily basis, it is clear that our local infrastructure was not able to deliver all those gigabytes and terabytes of data every time we changed some parts of application. So our users have experienced weak, slow, or unavailable services for hours. That was really unacceptable. We have analyzed this situation and calculated that to properly upgrade all of our on-prem infrastructure to support those peaks of heavy load, we would need to invest 8 weeks of work and a small number with 5 zeros of euros in cash. Another, more sophisticated approach was to migrate hosting of our specific part of application from local on-prem service to Azure App Service. All we need to do actually was to create our Azure App Service, upload the data, and edit only one line of code in our web application, only one. So we had solution in less than 2 hours because we did it first time. Now we would need about half an hour. During the migration, our services had no downtime at all, and users never felt a thing, not even one glitch. After that data migration, we also had several peak loads, and service response from Azure was half a second in worst case scenario. Also, good to know is that the price tag for this service is ridiculous. I will show you in a slide, and this is the monthly cost, really ridiculous. So from my experience, if you really learn how to properly use Azure possibilities, you might be able to use them in your line of work and be able to excel and gain competitive advantage on the market. And I'm pretty sure the LLPA will help you on that journey. Thank you all very much.
Great story, and thank you for sharing that with us. And now our second special guest, Maria Albulescu from CGK in Romania. Please, Maria, tell us what can you share with us?
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Patrick, for the introduction. I'm not sure if you can see my screen yet.
Yes, we can see your screen. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Let's get going. It's the first time I'm Maria Albulescu. I'm L&D officer for CGK Romania. It is a pleasure to be here, and I want to thank you, our learning partner, as well, for sending out the invitation. I'm going to share with you how we upskill our people through our corporate cloud craftsmanship academy, with focus on the Romanian approach, and more specifically on Azure, which is what we have been doing for the past few months. But first, a little bit about the company I'm working for, CGK. So CGK is a Belgian company with the headquarters in Hasselt in Belgium, and it's actually one of the most important ICT providers in the Benelux region. And we have offices in 10 European countries. What we do is we help our customers with the development and implementation of applications, infrastructure, managed services, outsourcing, user support, desktop management, and so on. And a large part of the business is to build and integrate solutions in cloud. Why Cloud Academy? Because our ambition is to become the leading European cloud orchestrator. So for CGK, actually cloud is a strategic skill. We need the technical expertise to be able to provide the best solutions for our clients. Therefore, through this academy, Cloud Craftsmanship, we aim to attract, retain, and develop our people on cloud technologies such as Azure. And we started this program with Azure 6 months ago. In a nutshell, this is the plan. The plan was very ambitious. Internally, we used to call it the Big Bang approach. And for Romania, we actually targeted the entire technical population, meaning around 400 people. And we organized the interventions in 3 sprints. So phase 1 was to get the larger part of the target population certified on Azure fundamentals. Phase 2 was to get the associate certifications, and towards the end of the program, phase 3 was to get the expert certifications. And besides that, we also developed an e-learning for all non-technical people, which was like an intro into cloud. And also we invited our CEO to give his perspective and answer some most of our burning questions. So I could say that in the end, we reached everybody. moving forward, this was the very high level presentation of the academy, and going forward I would like to share with you some of the things that we have learned along the way, and hopefully you can find them useful as well if you're thinking to develop or to build something similar. So actually this was a corporate program, so happening in our 3 big offices at the same time, in Romania, in Belgium, and in the Netherlands. The approach was the same, however the resources were very different in terms of the size of the company, number of participants, projects on Azure. And the thing we struggled the most with was actually meeting the minimum required numbers of participants to be able to run the classes as per the schedule. So it is very challenging for a relatively small company like Seheca Romania to take out from the business 20 architects, for example, all at the same time to sit in a training course for 5 or 6, even more days. And what we did together with our learning partner, we're very flexible and actually supported us a lot, was to divide the classes into smaller groups, space them out over a longer period of time. We also had participants who were attending the training courses during the day, and they were working on emergency client issues during the night. And we allowed participants to attend the training course for 3 or 4 days during the week, and for the rest of the content, they will study it by themselves. Another thing that we realized along the way was that we should have involved the line managers more from the very start. And we launched the academy with strong, solid sponsorship from the board, from the leadership team. But after we started, we struggled with getting the line managers on board, again, due to the huge time investment required for the associate and for the expert levels. And I'm talking about 7, 10, even 12 days of training in a very short span of time. And we realized that we need to really adjust what we are doing. We added extra calls with the managers, Q&A sessions. We built a separate channel on our team site to have everything as transparent as possible, so that we can foster a more collaborative approach and get everybody on the same page. And of course, in the middle of it, the pandemic happened. We're affected as well as everybody else, but the learning partner was very responsive, and we moved the classes to virtual very quickly, but most of the participants were not comfortable with this format for days on end. And here maybe a food for thought for the learning partners, what we can do to engage the participants more in a virtual setting, given the fact that a lot of the people don't have the same office setup or level of comfort at home to be able to sit through a lot of labs and days of training. So with the question, I'm a presentation here. Thank you so much. Are there any questions for me?
Thank you very much, Maria. Great story, and it's good to hear also examples from Seheca and how you how you drove your cloud skilling journey. So thank you very much. And I'll mention your name another time on the last slide that I promised when doing the introduction. So thank you, Ron. Thank you, Mizo. Thank you, Maria. Let me finalize this webinar now with a couple of slides with some information that are useful and interesting for you, I think. Well, first of all, if during any of the presentations the last 6 weeks, you think, well, I need to have more information. How can LLPA, how can the members of LLPA in my country help me in executing my skills plan? How can they help me bridging the skills gap so I can benefit from the opportunities in the cloud? Well, don't hesitate. Go to the website of LLPA where you can find our members. They're on screen right now, so you might see some familiar logos. But have a look at it and go to thellpa.com/members and see who is your contact person in your country. If you want to contact us directly, that's also possible. We have an email address, info@thellpa.com, and it's always possible to contact us that way. And we are more than happy to help you, advising you, creating your skills plan and also executing your skills plan. And our members in the countries are very well skilled for that. Then I would like to point out a couple of events that we have in the future, because I said, well, this is the last webinar that we have in the Global Cloud Skills Tour series, but actually there's another webinar. The 7th of July, BitNet in Romania is organizing an extra webinar with top speakers on in this Global Cloud Skills Tour series. A webinar especially for customers in Romania, and Maria, just like I said, you will also be one of the speakers there. So if you have any chance, please visit the link on the slides that and the links that are visible also in the screen below below the video. But there's other events as well. On the 13th of October, our member in Slovenia, Compass XNet, they organized their annual Thrive conference, a great conference where all technologies, future technologies, will be covered by top speakers. And if you have any chance to go to Slovenia, because I think that's possible again, and if you're interested in all those topics, please visit that conference, because it's a great conference on a great location in Slovenia. But also on the August 27th, Compass is organizing an Azure Fundamentals course. So that's also a very interesting event. And if you want to know the details or an overview on Azure, please visit this Azure Fundamentals course. And they also have a training on the data science bundle on the 13th of July. If you have any chance to access that course and get certified as a data scientist, this is a great opportunity to do so. And finally, they have an Office 365 administrator course on the 27th of July. And great opportunities to get skilled and get certified, or have your people certified. And contact us at the links that are provided in your screen. But like I said, this is the last regular webinar. Really looking forward to the webinar on the 7th of July by BitNet and the speakers of that webinar. But I would like to ask you to fill out your evaluation of this session. I think it was a great session with great examples, but I hope you think so too. And let us know. And if you have any other feedback, let us know as well. And if you fill out your evaluation, there is a chance that you might win 1 out of the 5 free advanced role-based courses. After today, we will do the raffle and we will let you know from all the people that filled out the evaluation which ones of you are the winners of the free course. So stay tuned. But first, fill out the evaluation and let us know what you thought about this webinar today. And that is the end of this series. The past 6 weeks, I've been here in this Microsoft studio with Ron, with other guests, Jan, Herman, Stephanie, Jeffrey, Lurleen online, Michael online, Kevin online. I'm sorry if I forget somebody, but I'm very happy that all of you, and Ron, you're here now, so I'm looking at you, but I'm very happy that you wanted to contribute on this great series. I'm pretty sure we've spread the news, the information on how you should get started to make sure that you can benefit from the cloud. And I would like to thank you all for watching this webinar, or maybe all the webinars. And I'd like to see you back next year, but because I'm pretty sure that we will do a series like this again next year. And let's hope that we can do more events in person and visit your countries. Thank you very much for watching, and have a good day, have a good afternoon, have a good evening.